Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar on what's new in UFT 14. My name is Brent Jenkins, Marketing Manager here at Checkpoint Technologies, and I will be your moderator today. Joining me today is Dean Carvin and Joe Colantonio. Let's start with you, Dean. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
All right, Brent, thanks. So my name is Dean Carvin, Director of Professional Services with Checkpoint Technologies. I've been in the QA field for about 17 years now, actually. Started right into test automation, just kind of jumped right in way back then, and have been focused on the HPE suite of tools, including UFT, LeanFT, and ALM Quality Center. So that's kind of my proficiencies around developing frameworks for test automation.
Awesome. Thanks, Dean. Joe, how about you?
Sure. First, thanks, Brent, for having me. I'm Joe from joecolantonio.com, testtalks.com, and Automation Guild, a blog, podcast, and online conference dedicated to all things automation. I'm also the test architect for a large Fortune 100 company. And I'm just really excited. Like Dean, I've been doing automation for 17 years and just really excited about this new UFT product that just came out, especially the LeanFT part of it.
Excellent. Thanks, guys, so much. So before we get started, a little bit about Checkpoint Technologies. Checkpoint Technologies provides expert services and best-of-breed software solutions for quality assurance and software testing, specifically when it comes to functional, performance, and application security testing. What we do is we enable organizations to deliver higher quality applications to market faster. So we started in January of 2003, and we're actually headquarters in sunny Tampa, Florida. We are an Atlassian Solutions partner, a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Gold partner, as well as proud partners of Mobile Labs, Turnkey Solutions, and Zephyr. We are also an HPE authorized software support and certified training partner as well. Along with that, we're also affiliated with QAI Worldwide. QAI stands for Quality Assurance Institute. And if you ever need training courses on things like the essentials in software testing or agile test strategies and more, we can certainly provide that to you, either in our training center, remotely, or even at your organization. As far as some of the professional services we provide, there's staff augmentation. So if you need some strong testing resources to be a part of your team, long or short term, whether on-site or remote, we can certainly provide that to you. We also provide consulting, so anything from handling upgrades to installation configurations, test automation assessments, audits, and more. Next is our version of onshoring, where we can house a team for you right here in our headquarters in Tampa, Florida. We also provide education, structured classroom training, or tailored mentoring, where we actually go on site in your environment and educate your team how to use a solution such as UFT, LeanFT, Selenium, and more, where real work actually gets done. So Joe, I know you wanted to speak a little bit on your Automation Guild, so I'll give you the floor.
Awesome, thanks, Brent. So just for the folks that don't know, I put on the first ever online conference dedicated 100% to test automation earlier this year, called Automation Guild. And what's really cool is it was really attendee-led. And what I did is, in order to have the best audio and video quality possible, I had the presenters pre-record their sessions so folks can watch them 2 weeks before the conference actually started. And then during the week of the conference, I had each speaker come on for a live Q&A, and the attendees could ask them any question, not just specific to their session. And it went so well that people want to know if they can access these videos after the fact. So once you sign up, you have access to the videos forever. But if you missed the conference, I just want to extend a special discount for Checkpoint people that are part of this webinar, that you get 20% off if you do Checkpoint at checkout, and you get 20% off the conference. The conference is all pre-recorded now, so you get all the recordings, all the recorded sessions, the whole thing, transcripts and such. So if you want to learn more about LeanFT, we had Yoshi from LeanFT actually do a really great hands-on session on LeanFT on how to get started. So there's a lot of things there that you may find value out of. And I just wanted to extend that to people on this webinar as a special, get 20% off using that Checkpoint discount.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. That's very exciting. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. This is a live webinar, but it's being recorded as well. So All registrants will receive a link to that recording within 24 hours. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this, so type all the questions into the question panel at any time. As you can see, we're using GoToWebinar. There's a look at the control panel over there on the right. Just type your questions in. Also, handouts are available during this webinar. The handouts that are available are the slides to this webinar in PDF form. There is actually an HPE functional testing product comparison document in there as well as the software mentoring services that I mentioned earlier, a bit of a flyer on that. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dean Carbon to kick off the presentation on what's new in UFT 14. Take it away, Dean.
Great, Brent. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So right off, one of the biggest confusions, I think, and one of the concern, but confusion is the different versions of licensing now for UFT. So let's cover that first before we get into the nitty-gritty of the changes within each tool. So first of all, there's three varieties of UFT, okay, kind of the UFT umbrella. The first is called UFT Pro. And what that really is the current LeanFT. All right, so LeanFT is UFT Pro. So I also want to make it clear that the name LeanFT is not going away. You'll still see LeanFT on the product itself. It's just being placed under the umbrella of the UFT family of products. All right, so again, LeanFT is not going away. It's considered UFT Pro under the umbrella of UFT. So the other version is Enterprise, UFT Enterprise. It includes UFT, and then LeanFT is included in that package. And with a concurrent license, you also get Sprinter. One of the caveats around Sprinter, one of the cool things around the Sprinter tool is that it links up to your UFT license but does not consume a license. So say you have 5 enterprise licenses and you have 2 instances of Sprinter up, you still can open up 5 instances of UFT. It doesn't consume 2 of those licenses. So that's a nice feature. Great tool, by the way. Sprinter is a fantastic tool. We at Checkpoint love using that tool. We mentor on that. If you use Quality Center, ALM, or UFT, check out Sprinter because it's packaged in that as well. On the ultimate side, it includes UFT Enterprise. Again, that's UFT, LeanFT, and Sprinter. It also includes BBT and Mobile Center for functional testing. So BBT is called business process testing. It's a methodology of creating manual and automated tests. It has to incorporate Quality Center or ALM. That's a separate licensing, of course. But on the UFT side, it includes a BBT license to interact with your BBT licensing in ALM, Quality Center. For Mobile Center for FT, it does not include, this package does not include performance and security testing. They're disabled, but you can use UFT with Mobile Center integrated. All right. So upgrade paths, again, another point of occasional confusion when things change in licensing. So if you have LeanFT, you can upgrade to Enterprise, and then included in that would be UFT and Sprinter packaged in with that. And then you can upgrade from Enterprise to Ultimate as well, and then that would be Mobile Center and BBT packaged in. So there are caveats around that, and we can maybe cover if anyone has questions around certain criteria. Maybe you have Mobile Center already in UFT, but you want to upgrade. How does that work with your Mobile Center licensing? We can maybe touch on that later on if you have any questions around that. But there's no forced migration, which is great, of course. And now there is a 60-day license trial, aside from the 30 days. So that gives you plenty of time to work with the tool in your environment to make sure that it's doing what you need it to do with your products that you're testing. Also, there's a runtime license. A lot of people aren't even aware of the runtime license for UFT, but also LeanFT can use that same runtime license to execute scripts without so the license gives you the ability to run tasks, but doesn't give you the ability to create scripts. So it's a lightweight licensing that can sit on a runtime machine just for executing your scripts. So let's get into some of the details around UFT Enterprise 14, some of the core features and enhancements. Around the continuous testing side of the house, there's now single sign-on available for ALM SaaS. So it's a very simple way to log in, log out of tool sets without having to have a login, username, password. So single sign-on is available if your company uses that. The other thing we'll get into a little bit more is Test Combination Generator, TCG. And that's a very exciting new feature in UFT that allows you to create test data for your test scenarios. And we'll cover that in more detail. As a matter of fact, there's a video that will be included for those of you in this webinar. At the end, it spells it out a little more, shows it clearer. And for those
thank you for bringing that up, Dean. I did want to mention that as well. Yeah, everybody in the follow-up email that's going to have the recording link, it will have a couple of videos demoing some of these new features. So thanks for bringing that up, Dean.
Sure. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 I believe we're including in there. So take a look at those, and it lays out. We just didn't have time during the 45 minutes to do that for you, but we'll certainly include that. So for those of you who are using Team Foundation Server, we hear a lot of companies using TFS, of course. It's very, very popular. And we'll often talk to companies, and they'll discount UFT because of no integration into TFS. Well, with version 14, that has changed. And we'll get into that a little bit in more detail. On the mobile side and Internet of Things, the UFT now supports mobile camera simulation. And this UFT has to be integrated into Mobile Center, of course. But think of those applications that, your bank application. You take a picture of your check, and you can deposit your check right from your phone. So you can actually now simulate that with UFT integrated into Mobile Center. MQTT. I wish we could quiz people. What's MQTT? Not too many people have heard of that. We'll get into that a little bit more as well. What does MQTT have to do with mobile and Internet of Things, and how does UFT use that? A little bit of a pause here. There we go. Thank you. So we talked about this, but the idea behind the packaging is there's a lot of competitors that package their products for various reasons, various types of products. And HPE has kind of recognized that and understood that's a great way to kind of decrease the cost of ownership for the products. So these bundled products are cheaper as opposed to buying them a la carte. All right, so that's the idea, one of the ideas behind the new licensing models. And around the tool itself, some redesign around the record and run. If you use UFT as a record and run screen, the features haven't changed. It just looks and feels easier to use, very much more user-friendly. There's a sniper mode now with UFT, and we'll touch on that a little bit, but really it's just another way to identify and learn the objects on your application, your page, on your website, or your mobile device. In the background, there's been performance enhancements and usability enhancements that are too numerous to mention, but a lot of underlying things have changed that help the tool perform better in web environments and so on and so forth. Documentation is now online. Before it was actually installed with the tool. So the documentation is now online. So with any browser, you can access the UFT user documentation. So what about challenges? So UFT 14 now handles a couple challenges that we typically find when we talk to customers about test automation tools. And one of those we hear quite a bit is UFT's old. It's 15 years old. I don't know how old that is in software years, but it's 15 years old in people years. So it's old, it's tired, it's been around, And for those of us guys who are over 50, we hear that too. But we like to think that we consider it seasoned, experienced, mature. Okay, UFT is a mature tool, but HPE is doing a fantastic job at keeping it up to speed on the newest technologies out there to support everything that you need for your testing. The other item that we hear a lot is to really do end-to-end testing and to test everything we need to test in our organization, we need to buy all these separate products. Well, again, the bundling handles that. So yes, you need UFT with Mobile Center, and then if you want BBT, you need to include that in there as well, maybe Sprinter, but they do all integrate seamlessly together. So as a bundle, they work very well. You can buy them as a bundle now. The other thing is people like Sprinter, but in the past you had to purchase Quality Center ALM to get a Sprinter tool. Well, now that comes bundled with UFT as well. So UFT, if you buy Sprinter or if you buy ALM and you have Sprinter, Sprinter will connect to the ALM license. If you have UFT, Sprinter will connect to the UFT license. Sprinter does not have a license in and of itself. It shares a license with either ALM Quality Center or UFT, but does not consume a license. So here's another thing we find a lot is, and this is true for any test automation, one of the biggest challenges around test automation is how do you manage your data? How do you create all these various data sets that are required for your numerous scenarios that your BAs throw at you to test? So you want the coverage. From the business side, coverage is very important. From the technical side is how do you build that into your test? So in the past, there's been some online tools to help you do that, but nothing integrated into UFT. Now there's what's called Test Combinations Generator, or TCG, for short if you like acronyms, but allows you to create any kind of test data that you need for your testing, and just names and dates with ranges, various combinations of data. It'll also allow you to create data based on regular expressions. So regular expression can define the kind of the format of the data. So maybe you have a machine code that handles various versions or instances of alphanumeric characters, maybe some special characters. You can tell TCG using a regular expression, here's the format of data that we need, and it'll automatically generate that for you. You then also flag rows of data to be error data or failed test, happy, or failed pass or information. So you can have happy path or error path, and you can define that in your data tables as well. So TCG is a great enhancement to UFT. There we go. I'm sorry, this thing's a little slow here for some reason. They're rendering very, very slowly on my side. For continuous testing, let's touch on this a little bit. So, for UFT has supported continuous testing environments, and certainly with LeanFT, you see that? Certainly for LeanFT, it has done the same. So now UFT can do the same, and it's supported. Hold 1 second, we're going back to the slide here. It's very slow.
I got you over here, Dean. You're fine. Keep going.
Cool. Thanks. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Yeah. So again, single sign-on, it can handle that. So that's very, very helpful for continuous testing, because continuous testing in the CI environment is everything's about speed. The less manual intervention you can do, the better off you are. And also we mentioned Team Foundation Service. So on the TFS side, with the new plus, so actually HPE developed a TFS plugin. The plugin allows the CI server, TFS CI server, to trigger tests using UFT from local file system or from ALM. And there's a number of things the number of options when you install that plugin. It gives you 4 or 5 new options that you can use to configure your tests for UFT and also to execute from various areas. And we mentioned the CI, the TCG. So creating your automated test data is seamless now within UFT itself. So drill down a little bit on the mobile and Internet of Things side. We mentioned the mobile camera simulation. And the other thing that's coming in the future is support for GPS and motion detection as well. So I'm not sure exactly when that's coming out, but it's coming out soon. So what about this MQTT? So MQTT it's a lightweight standard protocol for transferring data between devices and anything that supports the internet. So think about the purpose really is to handle devices in an environment where the connection is very slow, very minimal, even like satellite phones, things like that. But where the connection is very unstable. This protocol was developed. It's been developed for a number of years, but it's now supported by UFT, and it's something that you may not have ever heard of, but do some research about it, and it could probably come in handy with, especially those applications, those developing mobile apps that are used around the world, where you really can't control or have an idea of how strong that signal is. You can kind of account or build your application to account for those situations, and this MQTT data protocol will help you test those scenarios. And look at those numbers, 100 billion devices connected by 2020. That's pretty crazy, but that's where it's going. So there's also some simplified testing resources and features that in UFT we talked about to run the record setting. Again, not a big change, but it's much more user-friendly. Sniper mode, let's talk about that for a little bit, because I was just doing some research online, and some people were saying, so why sniper mode? You can learn all the objects on a page just by clicking it and saying, yeah, I want these types of objects, these types of objects. But that doesn't account for a certain section of the screen. Maybe there's a new frame that came up, or a new area of screen that's populated with new objects. You can tell UFT just to learn those objects within an area of your desktop or your screen or browser, and then it learns all those objects and puts them in the object repository. Okay, that's a sniper mode. Is you actually draw a rectangle around those objects to learn, and UFT recognizes that, finds the objects in there, and loads those into the object repository. Again, we mentioned there's improvements in the background for performance. I don't have numbers for you, but it is some very enhanced performance capabilities around test execution for web and in your mobile center as well. So as a recap, on the DevOps side, there's a couple of things I want to mention here too. So Bamboo is supported. Jenkins is supported now with 14, or has been, but Bamboo is supported with 14 now. And I understand for those of you using TeamCity, it's currently not supported, but that is in the works. It should come out hopefully in the next couple of releases. In the meantime, there are ways around integrating TeamCity with UFT. On the mobile side, you can actually use non-packaged apps to minimize cost for the instrumentation. The Amazon device farm can be used to actually connect devices that are in the Amazon farm. So they don't have to be physically in your office. You can actually use the Amazon farm to connect with Mobile Center. On the website, Phantom.js is currently supported as well, along with the Edge browser from Microsoft. And all the new versions of Firefox, Chrome, of course, Internet Explorer, they're all now supported as well. On licensing, we talked a lot about the licensing. I hope that cleared things up for you that we talked about earlier. And another thing on the runtime license for UFT that is now also available for the API side of testing. So that engine, if you're using doing GUI-less testing, then that runtime engine can be utilized for executing your scripts on a UFT or a UFT machine that doesn't have a full-blown version. So it's a cheaper licensing for that model. But in the end, just like us old guys, UFT is getting better with age. And like Joe said, we're all excited about where UFT is going, and LeanFT is going, and a whole family of products that are wrapped around the UFT umbrella. So speaking of LeanFT, Joe, I will hand it over to you to cover that portion, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Dean. Yeah, there's a lot of features in UFT I'm really excited about. The test generation that you showed is a big win, I think. I've been dealing with teams a lot of times that they only do happy path tests, and I think this is going to help them with their test coverage. And I also like how you can use Phantom.js. So really embracing a lot of newer technologies, which if you've been using QTP or HP products for a while, they used to be open source version versus vendors, and now it's really embracing. And that's what I really want to get into here with LeanFT is how HP really now is embracing open source solutions rather than it's us versus them. It's now how can we enhance your open source testing strategy in order to make it better for you. And so one of those things is LeanFT. So for those of you that don't know what LeanFT is, I first heard about LeanFT at HP Discover in probably June 2015. And what's really wild about it is, it's really was built from the ground up for the growing automation needs of people that are trying to move towards continuous integration and continuous development. And what's critical when you are moving into a more agile environment is that your tools integrate with your developers' tools. And so HP came up with LeanFT. And what's awesome about LeanFT, it really does fit into your developers' ecosystem. So if your developers are using, say, Java, and they use Eclipse or IntelliJ, you can also create your automation tests now leveraging HP's LeanFT using Java or those same IDEs. So what's awesome about that is no longer is it us versus them. Back in the day, I don't know about Dean, I've never been able to convince a developer to install QTP or WinRunner or UFT on their machine. It just never happened. So
no, they had these VB script, and that was just painful for developers to go back to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, they would never use VB script. So what's awesome what's awesome about this, it really builds up the team. And also when a tester who may not be as strong with development has an issue, there's less overhead for a developer to actually look at the code and understand what's going on. Because it's the same, usually use the same technology as your developers, it makes them easier for them just to look at your code and understand what's happening and not have to go, oh, wait a minute, how do I do this in VB script? I'm not dealing with that. So that's what's really awesome about LeanFT and where they started. Also, what's important about LeanFT is that Selenium is only for browser-based testing. And if you work in any large enterprise, a lot of your applications probably aren't just browser-based still. And even for me, we're developing a brand new AngularJS HTML5 application, and we have to integrate with thick client applications. So even if we use Selenium to test our web application, we can't do a real end-to-end test case because then we can't automate these thick client applications. We can use something like Seculi or AutoIt, but it's not really elegant. With LeanFT, you really can just plug that in and go back and forth between browser and thick client applications using your developers' SDKs. So it's really cool. That's one of the big wins. So another demand I usually get, or a lot of questions I get from my blog is, okay, Joe, do you know of any automation tools you can use to run against Windows, Mac, and Linux? And unfortunately, there really was no solution that I could really recommend that handled all three of those tech stacks. So one of the biggest new additions to LeanFT and LeanFT 14 is the ability to actually install and run your test on both Windows, Mac, and Linux. I think that's a huge win. It's a huge change. When you go to LeanFT, like Dean mentioned, you get 60 days. You can go to download the 60-day trial version and install it on Windows, or I just installed it on my Mac. It's just like installing it on Windows, and you can leverage LeanFT to actually help you with your cross-browser testing across different OSs like Ubuntu, Red Hat, on your Mac systems. And I think it's a really great addition. It's going to help you to get test coverage across all these different platforms, especially when more and more companies are doing things like Docker and starting up all these different instances or microservices. A lot of times they leverage Linux. And when you have an end-to-end solution now like LeanFT, you can run against all these different tech stacks and not have to worry about, okay, what am I going to do for coverage now for Linux or Mac? So I think that's a huge win. I'm just curious to know, I know Checkpoint Technologies, they do a lot of consulting. I know, Dean, have you got any thoughts on this? Have you had any clients that always wanted to know if there was a tool they can use against all these different OS systems?
Oh, yeah, just like you, Joe, that comes up all the time in conversations. And in the past, we really didn't have any. And we kept doing research, kept pinging, trying to find some new and shiny tool that could. And we really couldn't find everything that crossed all those different platforms. But you're right, with LeanFT, now that wall is taken down, so that's one of the best enhancements, honestly, that I'm seeing in 14.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate once again, the LeanFT SDK, you can currently use it with Java, JavaScript, and .NET C#. So using Visual Studio, if your developers are using Visual Studio, all you need to do is install LeanFT. It will notice you have Visual Studio. You tell it whether it's 2015, 2014, or if you have Eclipse, you point to the exe. And then when you start up your browser, what's awesome is you get this integration with your IDE now, so that you have an extra menu item called LeanFT. And then you can do things like use an object repository like you may be familiar with UFT. And even now, which we'll go over in more detail later, is there's a new one where you can use it specifically for Selenium. And so there's a lot of cool technologies there that we'll see shortly. So just another interesting point is I had HP at my Automation Guild conference, and we had a Q&A session with Yoshi and Ori Bennett, who's a project manager for HP's functional test tools. And so currently they support Java, JavaScript, and .NET, but they said the next on their roadmap is Python, and after that would be Ruby. So, I mean, I think that's awesome that you can actually write a test in JavaScript that leverages, say, web-based testing and be able to integrate or test web-based applications, all from using Java or JavaScript. And for me, that's just very exciting that not only do we have to do Selenium and then come up with another solution like if you use White. So a lot of teams use White framework to automate their Windows applications. Now you get this end-to-end solution using the same language, same project, and you're able to automate your browsers, automate your thick client applications. And for me, that's just huge. And that's one of the main functionality I really love about LeanFT. So as I mentioned before, LeanFT does integrate with Mac or Linux. So there's an actual plugin when you install LeanFT that once you have LeanFT installed, you start up your IDE, and automatically you'll have this new menu item called LeanFT, which allows you to create object repository, like an object repository map, or you can use it as an object spy. And so it's really neat is you could spy on an application, on a field, and it will tell you, okay, here are all the different properties you can use to automate this particular element. And so I know there's tools out there like Firebug or things like that, but this is integrated into your IDE and just makes script development so much easier because you can spy on an object, and not only do you get the XPath or CSS, you'll get recommendations by the object spy to say, hey, consider these properties to make it unique. You can click on the highlight button or highlight the element to make sure that those properties you're going to select really are going to work and make it unique. And also now with LeanFT 14, they have a new option that when you click on it, there's an option for a Selenium object spy. And so you could spy on an object just like you could do like with Firefox, with the IDE of in Firefox. But now you can do it all within your IDE and get all those properties. And what's really cool is with Selenium is you can also leverage the properties that they recommend to you within your script and still be able to run in your Selenium grid. So if you're wondering if you do use the extended API for your scripts, will you be able to use the Selenium grid? And in this instance, with the new version of 14, you actually can. So I think that's really neat. Another feature is this parallel execution. So it's not like parallel execution how you're thinking probably. What I think, and maybe Dean could correct me, is this parallel execution allows you to run multiple instances on the same client machine. So if you have LeanFT installed on your client machine, I think you can run up to 4 parallel tests at the same time. So that's really going to awesome. So that's really going to speed up your test. So when you go into your CI, you really want to get feedback as fast as possible to your developers, right? And one way to do that is run your test in parallel. And so being able to run 4 tests per client machine, I think is really going to accelerate your testing. And I also, once again, I'm not sure if Checkpoint Technology is aware of this. I think HP was talking about coming up with another tool that's similar to something like Sauce Labs or Browser Mob that will allow you to point your test to something in the cloud and run against multiple versions of different OS configurations and get that parallel execution that way also. But that's not part of this, but it's just another new feature I think that they've been working on. And also what's great about LeanFT, And I agree with Dean, as he mentioned. For some reason, drives me crazy. HP every 2 to 3 years start rebranding their products, and it causes a lot of confusion. So they are now calling LeanFT UFT Pro LeanFT. So anytime you hear UFT Pro, if someone just uses UFT Pro as a shortcut, just think LeanFT. It just is the version that allows you to integrate with your developers' tools and get all these extra functionality to really help you move towards that more shift left, shift right kind of movement that most teams are going to as they move towards Agile. So as you can notice here, it just shows you how it has a new LeanFT menu within your IDEs. And when you have this option, what's really cool is it supports different technologies like JUnit, TestNG. If you were running this in Visual Studio, it supports NUnit. And what's really cool is it supports things like Cucumber. So anything that you usually are using now, if you're not using LeanFT, it really is starting to support all these other XUnit type runners that you may be familiar with. So it's really a neat feature. And so this is just highlighting how you can use either TestNG or JUnit. Now here's an example of how you can use the object repository. So if you're familiar with UFT, you can also leverage that now within your, if you're using Eclipse, you can leverage that within your Eclipse version and use Java and get, the best thing, like I said, about LeanFT is if you're using Selenium, Selenium is just an API. And the problem is if you're starting off new, you have to create all this other functionality from scratch to get, a reporting and a report, to get a runner, to get all this stuff. But what's awesome about LeanFT, it acts almost like a wrapper on top of Selenium so that you don't have to start from scratch. You can use LeanFT to get the built-in object repository and to get the reporting features, and it saves you just a lot of time when you're starting a framework from scratch. So it's really cool. So here's an example, once again, of that object identification center. When you spy on an object, it will tell you all the different attributes you can use. It gives you an option to highlight it. You could do things like regular expressions, and you could do it all within your IDE, so it saves you time because you don't have to go back and forth between your browser, start up Firebug, highlight it, go back to your IDE. It's all integrated there for you, so it saves you a lot of time. It's like a seamless integration, which is really nice. So as I mentioned, LeanFT, really the newest functionality with 14 now is it really integrates now with Selenium really well. And so it really is a lightweight functional test automation tool, and it really does extend the development within your IDE for more powerful plugins. And what's really cool, like I said, is the Selenium plugin. And the Selenium is bundled with your HP Pro version. So whenever you have the Pro version, you can use LeanFT or UFT. And it really does enable you to use Selenium to create and maintain your Selenium scripts. It makes it easier because now it integrates directly with Selenium. And when it integrates directly with Selenium, it just makes easier to create and maintain and more robust Selenium tests. So a lot of problems with when you're using Selenium that I used to wish, I had like an index property that I could use in UFT to identify this, to make this more stable. For some reason, I always use the index property. It usually helps me with weird objects that can never be identified. But with LeanFT, you can do that. You can spy on an object, you can use an XPath or whatever properties it prompts you for, but you can also use these other extended properties that the LeanFT API now lends itself to you when you're using Selenium tests. So like I said, it includes that integrated IDE for you when you're creating a test. All you need to do is point it to either your Selenium jar file, or if you're creating a project using Maven, you could just say you created it using Maven, and then you can have Maven handle that dependency for you, and it will be able to pick it up. So like I said, what's awesome about LeanFT, it really extends and makes an extension of the Selenium API. So not only are you able to use the Selenium API, but LeanFT acts like a wrapper on top of it, and it gives you some helpful locators and utilities you can use on top of your standard Selenium API type thing. So if you have an object that requires an index or something like that, there's probably a lot of other applications for it, but you can leverage that for you. And it just makes your test a lot more reliable because not only do you have the built-in Selenium API, but you could just leverage what already works for you within LeanFT. Just also side point here is if you're familiar with UFT, what I think the team did really well with LeanFT is they made the API, whether you're using Java or C# or JavaScript, just like almost the API that you use within UFT. So even though you're using Java or C#, if you've ever used UFT before, the API itself is very readable. It uses usually the same method names that you're familiar with. So it has reporter, it has all of the methods that you're familiar with built in now, but within Java or C#. So it really brings down the amount of effort it needs to take your team to ramp up to use, say, Selenium with Java or C#. So they have this familiarity already with UFT, and you're actually able to leverage that now with LeanFT, which is really nice. And as I said, now you can use a Selenium-based, object center, so it allows you to create tests easier now for your Selenium test also. So it's not just LeanFT, you can also use it for Selenium, and you can use it with Selenium and the LeanFT web SDK if you wanted to. So you have all these different options now. And the beauty of it is it just uses a standard license for it, for you to get this functionality. So just to recap, what I think is really powerful is the parallel execution. So you can run parallel, I think up to 4 on one machine now, which is really nice. It supports native browsers for mobile applications. It integrates really well with ALM. So you also get that option. One of the things I struggle with my Selenium test is, okay, the test ran, how do I tell how it ran, what the results were, where do I store it? And I work for a company that really is regulated by the FDA, so you really need to have proof of what ran, when it ran, what the results were, and just makes it a whole lot easier to be able to integrate with ALM. But the beauty of it now is we can actually use our developer tools now and still get the integration with the ALM without having to use the heavy footprint of UFT, which our developers would never use anyway. So I really enjoy that. And like I said, you can write tests with JavaScript now and IntelliJ. And like I said, check out join up for the Automation Guild and check out Yoshi's session on LeanFT and the Q&A, and they talk about some of the newer things coming down the road for LeanFT. And Dean could probably point to this also. I don't think LeanFT was meant to replace UFT, but a lot of functionality I was kind of surprised by that I thought LeanFT would never support. I've heard from HP that they're thinking about supporting it, and like one of those is terminal emulator. So how cool, well, maybe it's just cool to me, how cool would it be to automate a terminal emulator using JavaScript, right? I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, I think at the beginning they had no intention of supporting some of these technologies that are now supported by UFT and have been forever. And terminal emulator is a great example. So that's, I believe, is enabled now with 14. And the other thing that's really interesting is a little blurb here about ALM Octane, the Gherkin integration. If anybody's using Gherkin it's a structured test language. It can be consumed by Cucumber and other tools, but LeanFT can also consume your Gherkin tests, and you can leverage those for your test automation using LeanFT as well.
No, Dean, that's actually a great point. So what we end up doing before LeanFT 14, I haven't integrated LeanFT 14 with us yet or with Octane, is that we have this weird mapping that we add to all our BDD tests. So we have like an app manual tag, and then we have to create a third-party application that reads in those tags and then puts it into TLM and then does the mapping of our gherkins with all these scenarios. So that's a great point. It actually integrates now with Octane. So if you have that type of situation, I don't know how common it is, that's a great user case. So yeah, thank you, Dean, for pointing that out. So that's it for LeanFT. Brent, back to you.
Thanks, guys, so much. Pretty much, well, we're really running out of time right now, so I'm only going to take a couple of questions because most of the questions that were asked were around the licensing side of things. So what I'm going to do is I've got a great document that kind of asks or answers a lot of those questions. So I'm going to throw that into the follow-up as well, along with a couple of the demo videos that I talked about, the slides, and the recording to this webinar. So there'll be all sorts of useful information in that follow-up email that you should receive in about 24 hours. But I'll throw a couple of these questions out, and then we'll cover the rest of them in that document. So here's one. Why would you want to use both LeanFT and Selenium? Do they both do the same thing?
So as I mentioned, a lot of times they don't necessarily do the same thing. So if you're spying on an object a lot of times with Selenium, you can only use one identifier, like an ID or a name or XPath, and sometimes that's not really reliable. Now what LeanFT does, it allows you to add other properties that you can add on top of that to make the object more unique, so when you are running your test, they're not as flaky because you have all these other identifiers you can use to help you identify it. That's just one user case, but there's other things you can use that enhances it. So with Selenium, yeah, you could create a report, you could do all this other stuff, but out of the box with LeanFT, it creates all that reporting for you automatically, so you don't have to do it from scratch. So it creates all this other stuff for you on top of just Selenium. So it works together to enhance Selenium with other functionality that you normally have to create from scratch.
Yeah, and it helps you kind of put some foundation around, some standardization around your Selenium scripting as well. So your reporting is standard, your object recognition can be standardized, things like that you don't have with just pure Selenium.
Excellent. Okay, how about this one? Will an existing HPE LeanFT customer with maintenance get HPE UFT Pro upgrade automatically?
Good question. They're really the same tool, honestly. If you're maintaining support for your current LeanFT version 12. Whatever it is, then you could just upgrade to 14. Again, it's the same tool. It's just under the UFT umbrella.
Great. Thanks, Dean. Here's another one. How will parallel execution affect the performance of PCs when running multiple tests? What else will be needed, recommended on the PC to upgrade for optimal performance?
I have not tried that, Joe. Maybe it's fairly new. I don't think any of us have really given it a shot, but go ahead. I
was going to kick it off to you, Dean, actually, because I know it's a new feature. I haven't had time to try it yet, so that's a good point.
I haven't either. If we can't, so that's one of these questions we will answer in an email, and we'll touch base with an HPE engineer and get that information for you.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Also, sorry, Brent, I just wanted to jump in really quick. I just wanted to add on to the question about how does LeanFT work better than Selenium, or not better, what do you get out of LeanFT that you don't get with Selenium? As I mentioned, this is a huge point. Selenium only supports browsers. When you get and use LeanFT, not only can you automate browsers, but you can also automate non-browser windows. So I know a lot of times companies have browser applications that pull up like network dialogues, and they have to use like AutoIt to integrate with it. When you use LeanFT, you don't have to worry about that. It handles any type of technology from browser to your thick client, all within one script. So I just wanted to add that really quick to give some clarity.
That's a great point, Joe. As a matter of fact, we have a customer right now who they're creating a web application to replace a thick client application. Actually, it's an old VB app. So they need to do some integration testing. There's some features that are still the old version, and then they click a button and the browser opens up. So LeanFT is perfect for this. LeanFT is perfect for those environments.
Absolutely.
Good.
Awesome. Okay, I think you guys covered this briefly in the wrap up, but can I use UFT Ultimate and then leverage BBT within ALM Octane?
Okay, that's a trick question. All right, because I say that because Octane doesn't support BBT. That's all. Octane is really geared towards shift left testing, more agile testing. BBT really is not. So ALM, what's now called ALM.net, supports BBT, but not Octane.
All right. Well, I mean, we got some more great questions, but we're already almost 5 minutes over. So just so everybody knows, we will include the answers to all your questions in the follow-up email as well, along with that frequently asked questions on the licensing side as well. So lots of stuff to look forward to tomorrow in your inbox from us. So before we close out today, I just wanted to mention a few of Checkpoint Technologies' upcoming events. First off, we'll be at the QAI Quest conference in Chicago next week. Our president, Bob Cruz, will be presenting on the Internet of Things, as well as teaching the 2-day CSTE prep course. Also, our Director of Client Management, Paul Shovlin, he'll be giving a great presentation on 10 best practices that performance testing experts follow. After that, our next webinar is scheduled for April 19th, and it is on 8 incredibly cost-effective ways to improve your QA processes. You can visit our website to register for that. So I want to invite the audience to reach out to us with any other questions you may have or anything your organization may need assist with. I do encourage everyone here to take the very short survey at the end of this webinar letting us know how we did. Your feedback is crucial to making our webinars better and better as we go on. So with that, on behalf of myself, Dean Carvin, Joe Colantonio, we hope everybody enjoyed the webinar and hope you have a great rest of your day.